Welcome to another episode of One of Us Knows What They're Talking About, and the other one is you. I'm Lori Burch, your host. Join us as we discuss and unpack wills, trusts, estate planning, and probate law in a way that's actually informative, interesting, and, well, hopefully entertaining. Because if you don't have a will, the state of Texas has one for you. Let's dive in. So today we're joined with someone. We are joined as special guests, Jaime Duggan or Jaime Duggan, depending on your origins. And Jaime will introduce herself, but she is primarily, or really only, a family law attorney. That's all she is. And her firm shares office space with our firm. Although that's not how we met, because that'd be a really weird way to meet. It's not like college where you just get assigned a roommate. It's like you show up. It's like, oh, so you're the law firm that we're sharing with. So no, cool. We do. Although none of us ever see you there.
Yeah.
And why don't you ever come to the office? Let's dig into that first.
Well, I mean, it started with a lot of different things, and now it's evolved to I'm doing all the sales calls. So most days I'm literally like back to, but that's why I was late, because I was back to back all day long. So it feels like, why would I drive all the way to the office and put on real pants so I could sit alone in my office with the door closed on calls?
So that begs the question, what kind of pants are you wearing now?
Well, I don't want anyone to get too jealous, but they are Kirkland brand sweatpants.
Ooh. Nice.
Very comfy. And they say Kirkland right down the leg. It's nice.
Wait a minute, is that Costco?
Yeah.
Yeah. Do they have sweatpants there?
Yeah, they do.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
I mean, some pretty nice socks too, like are really comfy.
Mm-hmm. To be clear, I don't wear them outside of the house because I don't know that I'm that committed to Kirkland brand, but
you're not that committed to giving up yet.
You're right. Exactly.
You'll get there, Jaime. I feel like you're at the tipping point of just completely giving up.
Yep, it really could happen any minute. It could happen right now, like during this podcast.
I've been suspecting this for years, actually. I'm actually surprised that you haven't given up yet.
Right. Or have
I think you're doing great, Jaime.
You're doing great, Jaime. Okay, so Jaime, introduce yourself more fully.
Okay. I'm Jaime Duggan. I am an attorney, so that is true. That is not the only thing I am. You know, I have friends and family, and I'm a golfer.
Ooh.
And
aren't you a lefty?
I am a lefty.
Yeah.
Wow. Which is one of the reasons why I'm so cool and Lori's so drawn to being my friend. I'm from California, so I grew up in California, and then I came to Texas to go to law school. Went to law school at Texas Wesleyan in Fort Worth, which is now Texas A&M. But started a law firm. I practiced family law, and somewhere in there, I met Lori, and then my life changed and got so much better. But I practice family law, so we do.
Sarah, I need you to isolate what just happened and save that forever.
Okay. Is there anything you want her to edit out, Jaime? Just tell Sarah, and she will 9 times out of 10.
She probably won't, but you can tell her.
Okay, well,
tell her.
Yeah.
So, Jaime, very exciting introduction. I can tell that you're really ready for this.
I am a special guest. I thought you would be introducing me.
You are. Well, I mean, I thought you might want to share some things in your own words, but clearly that was wrong. So tell us primarily in the area of family law, because a lot of people don't understand what we call practice areas, because quite often people think what we do is family law, which I totally get that. It's way more about families than divorce and child custody battles. However, in the grand poobah of deciding legal practice areas, I don't know who decided these things, we are not family law. You are family law. So what is family law, and then what are the primary cases that you take?
Family law, first of all, is a practice area that actually does have more to do with people's daily lives in their family and how they interact with each other. And so it's definitely more family law than, estates, trusts. It includes things like divorce, child custody cases. So if you're not married, but you have a child with somebody, then that's a custody case. We and there's there are things that are all included in custody. That includes, visitation or child support or enforcement of child support if someone's not paying that. That's all custody. That's all family law. We also do adoptions and name changes and gender marker corrections. And then we also do property agreements. So that's either a premarital agreement, so an agreement that you would make with your spouse before you get married about how you want your property, the things that you accumulate, to be divided. Or after you get married, you can also make an agreement that would be a post-marital agreement. So we put together those contracts between spouses also.
Excellent. So Jamie, how dumb is community property?
Man, like on a scale 1 to 10, maybe 12, being like really dumb. It certainly is confusing. Folks really have a hard time with it, I think. And there's not what is it, 6 or 7 states, I think, that have community property?
I believe it's 9.
Okay. I think the concept itself, could sort of make sense. And really what it is that everything that you get while you're married is considered community property. And that means that both spouses have an interest in it. So, that seems pretty simple, right? Your income, your paycheck, if you buy a car, you buy a house. It doesn't matter if the car's in your name or your spouse's name. If you buy it during the marriage, it's still community property. It belongs to both of you. It's like forcing you to share with your spouse. So that's kind of nice, right?
Oh, Sarah has a daughter.
You said paycheck?
Yeah.
Yeah, girl.
Sarah, sweet
Yeah.
Sarah.
No way.
Yep.
Your common law roommate
Sarah.
that you have.
Okay, we need to stop because we're perpetuating this. We're making her meet different prongs of the test.
I said roommate.
She does not, you said common law. She does not represent herself to be common law at all.
Do you not hold yourself out
But
to
she
be
did
married?
seem to be concerned about it, so maybe she...
Do you not hold yourself out to be roommates?
Stop.
Roommates is one thing.
That's literally what I said.
Yeah.
So my favorite part of community property is it's kind of an easier way a lot of the times, even in the legal biz, where we'll say 50-50.
Legal biz.
But the fun thing is it's actually not 50-50. So if you have a candy bar and it's community property, it's not like you can break it in half and here's your half and here's your half. Is that you both have equal rights to the entire candy bar.
Yes.
And I think that's
fun and exciting.
And so for estate planning purposes, what gets a little tricky for us is when we have people that if they pass, they don't necessarily want everything to go to their spouse, which there's lots of reasons. I think one of the most common reasons, or I should say one that I understand, because most of them I don't understand. I think it's ridiculous. But one of the ones where it's like, oh, that makes sense, is when people get like remarried later in life and they have kids, they got their own families, but they want to get married for companionship, love, like all of that. But as far as their money or assets, their spouse doesn't need it to survive, that they don't need any of that, and they want to make sure that it goes back to their own families. And so that's really where, sometimes when we're having a meeting with clients, they're not expecting, like they might expect with you, to hear things like premarital agreements or post-marital agreements. And I mean, their eyes get so bugged out. And half the time, once we go through this, not even half the time, like 90% of the time where we go through it and talk about how they're trying to accomplish X, this is how you get there. And they choose not to do it. It's like, well, have fun. All I can hope is that I die before you. I often think of that with clients. But the point is that pre and even post-marital agreements, and the only difference primarily is one you do before you get married and one you do after you're married. But from estate planning, and then I want to talk about family law, but estate planning is not about contemplating if you all divorce. It's just about making the statement of, this is yours, this is mine, this is ours. Yeah. And this is how things are going into the marriage, and this is how we're going to acquire things going forward in our marriage. Yeah. And I think in a lot of scenarios, it's just a really smart thing to do, but it's more paperwork, it's more expense. Unlike doing estate planning for a couple where the same firm can most of the time do that for both of them, you need two different attorneys involved representing each one, but it really can be a smart thing to do. So the last thing I want to say that comes up with us, and then Jamie, I want you to talk about premarital, postmarital agreements, community property, is my favorite thing is when people have the audacity to ask me divorce questions, because the answers are so different when you say, if so-and-so dies, who gets this? And we just have to ask a series of questions and then we can give you the answer. When it's divorce, and you bear the brunt of this more than we do, because we're like, oh, let's refer you to Duggan and have a consultation with them to tell you who gets what. It's really whatever the hell you guys will agree to.
Yes.
It's not like this given that, husband's going to get this or wife's going to get that, or you're entitled to this, it is absolutely 100% whatever you all will agree to. Everything else, unless you have a prenup, right? Everything else, tear up, throw out the window. It does not matter. It's completely different than when you ask an estate planning attorney what happens when someone dies. So Jamie, take it from there.
Yes. I mean, you can only give to someone something in your will or your trust that which belongs to you. So when you say, if you don't have a pre or post-marital agreement, and let's say you and your spouse buy a house together, it's community property, and you decide in your estate planning that you want the house to be sold and the proceeds to go half to your spouse and half to, I don't know, one of your favorite children. You're only giving away your portion of the community property. So your spouse still has their own portion of the community property, which is that chocolate bar idea. Like I think the part of it also that makes it really fun is that, Laura was right when she said there is no 50-50. So that's probably the most common thing that we have to educate our clients on. There is no 50-50 in Texas. That happens a lot in other states, a lot in TV shows and in the movies, not a thing in Texas. So the law says that the community property has to be divided. It has to be divided at some point. Either you're going to get divorced or one of you will pass. Then it has to be divided. And it's to be divided in a way that is just and right.
Is that the code?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So I would imagine that what Lori thinks is just and right is probably not the same as what Sam thinks is just and right. Because I think Sam's
Oh, no, that's not true. Well, maybe that might be true, but I will tell you that whatever Sam thinks is just and right is 100% what Sara thinks is just and right, because they share a brain cell. And it's not a 50-50. They both have equal access to the same brain cell.
Well, that's good. Then they can collaborate.
Yeah.
Yeah, sometimes it doesn't go so well.
No.
But, you know.
I have no idea why that made me ask this question, but have you seen the story of these conjoined twins where one of them got married? How does that work, Jamie?
Everyone slowly takes a step.
How is that different from anything else?
Because she's literally attached to her sister.
I get.
So does her sister, like, I don't know.
She's like, I understand the concept.
I wish I had fully formed this question in my head. But
I like how it's processed while they're speaking.
Sharing a brain cell kind of made me think of this. And I've seen this story. And, you know, a lot of people, you know, go into the gutter and think about those things. And you are free to think through it that way. That's fine. But I'm just thinking from...
If you marry a conjoined twin, does the twin you didn't marry have
they wouldn't have
right
any
to your property? Is that what we're getting at?
I mean, I guess not.
They're all separate people, right? They're just not separate physically.
They are literally not separate people. That's the point of the question, Sam.
Legally,
separate. Yeah, like legally, like they have their own
two birth certificates.
Yeah,
I would assume so.
Yeah.
I don't know.
So then, I mean, you can't marry two people, so you're only married to the one.
Not anymore.
I know.
All right, so let's move off of this. I'm sorry that the brain cell conversation led to this.
I
did some Googling here.
Cynthia went to Google.
And this is interesting. I don't really trust the AI overview. However, it says in most jurisdictions, community property laws likely treat conjoined twins as a single entity, meaning all assets acquired during their shared lifetime would be considered community property, equally divided between them, regardless of which one technically earned the income. Yes, between the twins.
I guess if you have like somebody married and they have a house with their spouse, the conjoined twin is like living with them, right? So that makes sense.
But reading the AI overview is a complete contradiction to the whole premise of this podcast that one of us knows
that's
what
why
they're talking
I'm
about,
letting you
and the other
know
one is
so you can. Yeah. Again, that was the first thing.
I think it's a fascinating legal question.
Yeah, I wonder how many cases there have been on that. I'll have Ryan do some research and pull the case law.
Yeah, I think this one's one we need to come back to.
Okay, we'll Sara really likes corporate jargon, so she'd like to put a pin in it and circle back.
Like on this edition or like a future one when...
Just amongst ourselves at the very least.
Whenever you come back, you know.
Oh, in this episode, no, we're not going to circle back to it because...
We'll have you back like in a few weeks, Jamie.
If you think we're off the rails now, wait until we get to the Sara and Sam Ask the Expert segment. We did this with Sam Johnson, and they pitched potential business ideas to him, and he got to say whether he thought...
Nice.
And so
what if I don't think this is really off the rails?
You don't.
You should join us every week then.
You should join us every week. We have a permanent spot for you. So I have a question for family law attorneys because we encounter this stuff all the time, and it's frustrating and it's annoying. And I just presume there's something that we don't understand that's happening on your end for us to be able to deal with this better. But when one spouse is awarded the home in a divorce decree, we often, like, first of all, I want to know what your firm does, if anything, to actually reflect that in the title of the home. And what happens to us is then we have a single person who comes to us that wants to, let's say, do a trust, and they want to deed their home to the trust. And then the home's actually in the name of their ex with them. And we have to figure out what to do. Like that is a very common scenario. So what say ye?
Yeah. So when what our firm does, so to be clear, not all attorneys do this, and it's frustrating. If we have something like that in the divorce decree, we're going to make sure that we put something in place so that those transfers actually happen. The same thing for like a 401k, if we were dividing that, there's work that needs to be done after the divorce decree is entered so that those things can be split. So the easiest thing to do is to include in the divorce decree a requirement that whoever's not getting the house signs whatever deed is necessary to be signed. So we include specific parameters. We also draft the deed before the case is over. And so the divorce decree says you have to sign this deed within X amount of time. And then we make sure that the deed is, in our cases, we make sure that those deeds are filed with the property records before we close out the case with our office.
Do you often see, though, that other family law attorneys just don't do their due diligence on this, that they're just like, oop, got your divorce, you're on your own? Mm-hmm. Or let's talk about this scenario, when people try to do their own divorce. Let's talk about that, because we talk a lot about how horrid it is for people to DIY their estate planning. And we actually had a guest a while ago, a friend of mine through Leadership Plano, who did a DIY divorce, and then her ex died. And because they didn't do the divorce correctly and he died without a will, I mean, it was very hard and tragic for her. However, it gives people like you and me such great fodder to be able to demonstrate. And she was very open and candid about how terrible what she did was. And so explain a little bit, if you would, about kind of the pitfalls and dangers of trying to do DIY divorce.
Well, if we're using the house scenario specifically, I mean, there's plenty of people who don't, speak to their spouse after they get divorced. And so maybe you're not going to keep up with them and know where they are. So if you're getting the house and they don't sign a deed, when you go to do something with the house, like put it in a trust or give it to somebody or sell it, you can't, because there's not a deed that says you have the interest in the house. So the problems could be you don't even know where they are anymore. Like, how are you going to get in contact with them to have them sign a deed? The other issue is there's nothing legally forcing them to sign the deed. Right. If the form divorce decrees that you can get online and do it yourself, it's easy. You just check some boxes. It doesn't include things like that. It'll say who you decide is going to be awarded the house. So this spouse is awarded the house. Done. They've got the house. But unless you know how to make that happen, obviously that's the issue. I think another part of that's really scary and frustrating is what you're going to do with the mortgage.
Right.
There's plenty of people who don't have a mortgage on their property, and so that's not an issue. But if both spouses are on the mortgage, then whoever gets the house, it doesn't relieve the other person of the financial responsibility for the mortgage. It'll probably say the spouse who gets the house has to pay the mortgage. Great. What happens if they don't pay it?
Right.
The other spouse is still going to have that on their credit. They're still going to have issues with that. The house could still get foreclosed if the mortgage is never paid. So there's things that you can do to safeguard against those things also, but only if you know that you need to do them. So most people haven't gone through a divorce and aren't going to know that on their own if they do it.
So that actually hits on what my friend's scenario was, or part of the issue was, and that is not just mortgage, but all debt. Because in a divorce, you need to establish who's carrying, who gets what debt, who's taking care of all of that. And I would imagine that it's fairly common when people are trying to do this on their own that they miss the boat big time. They're thinking about the things, and I do want to get to kids, custody of kids, child support, all of that, but that they're not necessarily really looking at debts and liabilities.
Right. It's actually really important to have specific language. I mean, you all know this, obviously, same thing for wills and trusts and all of that, but there has to be specific language in these court orders so that you can enforce them. You can make someone do something that's put in there. So let's say the decree that you get online, DIY, says, I agreed to pay the American Express credit card. Or that debt is awarded to me. I'm awarded the debt on the American Express
Yay!
credit card. Thank you. Okay, so great. I'm awarded it. If that's all it says, then when I don't pay that, my ex-spouse now has no way to make me pay that. It's got to include things like I have to pay it to American Express directly when it's due on this date and this amount. It has to be specific about what I'm supposed to do. Otherwise, there's no way to make me do it. If my ex-spouse went to the court and said, she didn't pay that, then the judge would say, okay, well, I can't make up language that's going to make her pay that.
Right.
Does that make sense?
It seems to me, though, that leads to the same issue that we see, is that if you do want to enforce something that you did on your own, at some point you're going to have to get an attorney.
Oh, yeah.
And it's going to be a lot messier and more expensive. And that's the same thing, like with wills and trusts, like when you pass away, you'll have to have an attorney then. There's like 0.0001 type of probate cases when someone dies where a Texas court will allow you to not have an attorney, meaning basically every type of probate procedure when somebody passes away requires an attorney. So at some point you're going to have to hire an attorney, more likely than not, and it's going to be messier and more expensive to do that. So it's not like you're even saving any sort of fees or money or hassle or mess. You're just creating more of it.
Yeah. And some things that you do can't be fixed. So if you don't do it right the first way, then there may not be a way to fix it later.
Especially when you're dead.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So
we also do other things we include language that makes the decree a muniment of title. So if we couldn't get a deed signed, we can file that with the county records also.
Oh, nice.
That's nice.
I've never heard of that before. That's really good. I do have a question. Sarah and Sam, if you were to get divorced, who would get the brain cell? Or would it be like joint custody?
What if they just become conjoined then?
Yeah.
Yeah, we just become
So speaking of custody, because you and your firm and our firm deal a lot, if not primarily, with individuals and couples who have young children.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And so we'll get to some of the more nuances like second parent adoption and all of that, but let's stick to how custody works when you're working that out with people, and how horrible are some parents using their children as leverage in these things. And that is probably the number one reason why I could not do family law, and why I'm so appreciative of people like you who do have a passion for it and are willing to do this. Just as I'm sure there's attorneys that are appreciative that we do the death, dying, and disability stuff. But yes, that's just horrid. So talk a little bit about just your experience and what happens, good and bad, when it comes to child custody, as well as child support. And last piece, because this is something that I think I remember from the bar exam, but please confirm it, is that
a really long time ago.
You cannot use child custody and child support as dependent on each other. So if you've got someone who's withholding child support, you can't withhold visitation from them. Like you didn't pay your child support, you don't get to see your kid. But anyway, go.
Yes. Yeah.
All you.
You also can't make an agreement that says we're together now, but if, we separate in 5 years, you're going to pay me child support. Can't do that stuff either.
Oh yeah, we've had people want to do that that reminds me of interesting things people have wanted in a premarital agreement. So that, and I want to talk about custody. I want you to do that. So I'm going to make a note to circle back to interesting things in premarital agreements.
I think, of course, there's, a ton of horror stories, things that we've seen that parents do that frankly other attorneys do to kind of make custody issues worse than they have to be.
Oh, we don't know any attorneys like that, do we, Jaime Duggan?
No, zero. And really, the goal, at least in our firm, the goal in custody cases, divorce cases, is to try to get us to an agreement. If we can make an agreement, ultimately, that's better for everyone. Cost less attorney's fees, less stress, emotional, draining, all of that stuff. So especially when it comes to custody, we will try to make agreements if we can. And so that includes helping our clients understand what they're actually fighting for or over, and then creative ways to kind of alleviate that stuff. So, when we're talking about child custody, there's really 3 parts. One part is the rights and duties, who gets to decide and make decisions about education or, getting tonsils out, those kinds of things. The second part is the schedule, where the kid's going to be and when. And then the third part is financial support. So child support, health insurance. So a lot of times it's probably the biggest thing we hear. Folks will call and say, we talk to them, I want sole custody, or my spouse is saying they want sole custody. And really, that means a lot of different things to people. That's not a thing necessarily that is in Texas. So we can piece all of those things apart and say, okay, what part of this is that? What is it that you're really looking for? And maybe what other things do we not have to fight over because they're not going to make a big difference in your day-to-day life?
Right.
So helping our clients understand that really is a big piece of it, so that we're not spending time unnecessarily fighting over things that really aren't going to matter.
Jaime, to what extent are you able to basically remove any sort of custodial rights, visitation rights, or anything from a legal parent?
It's very difficult to do. If you are a legal parent, there has to be sort of extreme extenuating circumstances for you to not have any visitation rights to your child. For a judge to give you that, there has to be child abuse, neglect, creating some kind of unsafe environment, like drug use and where your living situation, something that's really beyond. They get punished by losing their iPad, and I don't like that.
Yeah,
this can't be a difference in parenting styles.
Yeah, and if I remember correctly, again, because I've never practiced family law, I only knew enough to pass a bar exam twice. But is it something where it, like, even the danger, like, it has to be like immediate and imminent? It can't be something where, like, it could happen, or they kind of know someone who's doing drugs and this and that. It's like it has to be very likely or like I said, imminent.
Yeah, so there can be kind of like a progression of things. So if we're thinking about something like imminent like that, we can, if there's, depending on the circumstances, we can ask judges for a sort of emergency type order that allows us to remove the child from the other parent's possession. And that can only be for a really short window of time. It's like 14 days. And then we have to have a hearing in front of the judge, and the judge has to decide, what's going to happen in a long-term basis. Or even, for the time being. But if you've got, a parent, let's say maybe there's drug use, and they have positive drug tests throughout the case, if they stop using, maybe their levels are going down, they're kind of getting things together, the judge has to allow reasonable visitation that's not going to put the child in harm. So having that kind of an issue that isn't, it's a huge issue, but if it's being worked on and dealt with, that's not a reason to terminate parental rights forever or terminate visitation.
Where we see some of that is it is fairly common that when we have divorced parents, that when it comes to guardianship, that is who would take care of your child if you die and they're under 18, they don't want the other legal parent, their ex, to be that person. And it's like, I feel you and I get you, but it doesn't, 9 times out of 10 or 99% of the time, really, it's not going to work that way. And so we have to, and I'm actually excited because you alluded to something when we were talking about prior to this in Slack, what you might want to bring up. And it's actually one of it has to do with custody and so forth of pets, because Sam and Sara actually, I think all of you were sharing the same brain cell today, because what you had put, JB, as a potential topic was also something that these two hooligans had also thought of. So we are getting close to time where we need to wrap up, not because there's a time limit for the podcast, but because I have things I need to go do today. But I do want to mention a few more things. And that is, so are there like really interesting things you've had people want to put in premarital agreements? Because we do just a few of them. And my favorite one was somebody who wanted to put in a fidelity clause. And
it was a real fun conversation.
It's okay. Look at Sarah's face. She's going to go Google fidelity.
I'm already Googling it for her.
Do you know what infidelity is, Sarah?
What it means.
Yeah. I'm like telepathically telling her.
And so the instances like that are like some of I think the most fun instances of having to be a lawyer, because nothing is black and white in the law. And so I had to ask him, I said, well, sure, we can do that. However, we need to define what infidelity is. Is it texting? Is it kissing? Is it penetration? Is it like, I don't want to have to bring these things up, but if you want something like that, we have to be able to define what is, right? Yeah. And then what are the consequences of if it happens? Because there's no point to saying you can't do this if we didn't say, well, then if you do this, then this happens. So anyway, don't know if you've had that particular instance, but what are some other things? And I guess Cynthia has a question. Cynthia, is this the time for your question, or do we want Jamie to respond and then whatever your question is?
She can respond in after that, just before everything derails. Further.
Okay, this part, this is like a side comment. I'm afraid, because what if, are my clients going to be looking at this? Surely not, right? Because they're going to be like, oh yeah, that was me.
Well, we are, what are we, Sarah? We are in the 20%, top 20% of podcasts on Spotify.
Okay, so yes, to answer your question, there's no end to the creativity of people when they're trying to put together their property agreement.
Artfully worded.
Thank you. We've definitely had some interesting. One of the ones that I thought had never occurred to me, but if we get divorced within a certain amount of time, then the one spouse has to pay back the other spouse's family for the cost of the wedding. Kind of liked that. So you got to get in there first.
I like that. That's starting to get to my level of petty. I like it. Yeah. Approved.
And I did have one time that this isn't like super crazy. I just chuckled a little. I had one spouse not my client, the other side, who wanted to make sure, like specifically was put in there that he will get the Xbox. And I thought the amount of like telling your attorney and telling us, like, you just spent more money on attorney's fees than you did on the cost of the new Xbox. But I mean, I don't know, maybe it was some sort of collector Xbox or something. It was very important.
I doubt seriously it was. Yeah.
But I think, people, what I like is, can we do this? Can we do this? Can we put in this? Can we put in that? And the answer usually is, yeah, if to your point, we get in all of the specifics and we figure out a way to do it. But my question is always, is your spouse going to sign this? Are they going to agree to this? Because we can put in whatever we want, but if they don't agree to it, then
how many prenups have you been hired to put together that don't end up getting signed? Because we've had a number of those.
Yeah, I would say, I mean, I don't know, maybe 20%. It happens. Definitely happens. Yeah. I think, it's over. The concept makes sense, right? But then when you get the document, it's like 40 pages long. And so then it just feels really overwhelming. And why are you saying this and that? And it's personal.
Well, technically it's 20 pages long. You just have to repeat everything for each one of them. So it's 40 pages, but it's only 20 pages of information because party A, party B, party A, party B, party A, party B.
It's very efficient.
Yeah. The law is wonderful. Cynthia, what did you have as a question?
My question to you is, how often do you get cases where you have to represent people that are fighting CPS on something? Because I know some family law attorneys handle those, but others don't.
Yeah. It's our firm definitely handles those types of cases. They're even more sad, I think, really, because you've got this whole other entity, CPS, right? That we're fighting with, and CPS actually has a sort of maybe scary amount of power when it comes to removing children and putting things in place in order for you to have them released from CPS care. So we do handle them, because it's a government entity, depending on what CPS is requesting, then there, a lot of times the parents have to be appointed an attorney if they can't afford one on their own. Mm-hmm. So often, and we don't handle appointments. So, kind of depends on the circumstances, but yeah, we do. It's complicated, and it's really, there's a lot of people involved in that type of a case.
Yeah, so I'm actually surprised. Go ahead, Cynthia.
Oh, there's just a lot of people who don't realize how, whenever CPS gets involved with children, how quickly they can be removed, and also how each party really needs to have an attorney. Even the child gets an attorney ad litem to represent their interest, and there's just so many aspects of that people don't think is family law until they're threatening their spouse that, I'm going to call CPS, or former spouse, I'm going to call CPS on you, or the other legal parent of their child. So. Yeah.
And once CPS is involved, it's really complicated. I think one of the aspects of it that we probably handle more often is a family member or, a foster parent who's wanting to intervene, step in and have custody of the child. That's probably something we do more often, but yeah.
I'm actually surprised at how interesting this was. It's not what I was going to predict when we invited you on the show, Jaime. And so I feel like I think Sara, get with Jaime on getting her to come back, because I would, if we don't get to the Sam, Sara Ask the Expert segment, then everybody will be disappointed. There will be 20% of Spotify, or 80%. Anyway, I don't know how that works. Anyway, a lot of people are going to be disappointed that we don't get to this. So we need to get you back. I definitely want to talk more about second parent adoptions, particularly for the LGBTQ community, as there's a lot of concerns around that lately. Choosing attorneys, and what to look for. So those are great topics. We'll dive into those again. But without further ado, Sam and Sara have put together some questions that they have for you. And even before we do that, Memphis is wanting to get in, and he just got a haircut. And I was promising that we were going to show, come here, baby, his little haircut.
Oh,
I can't even really tell, can you?
I
See
can
how
see
it's
where, like,
fluffier.
yeah, you can tell where he looks lighter.
Yeah.
Did you give him a haircut?
No, he went to a kitty groomer.
I didn't even know that was a thing.
Apparently, and this is according to our vet, he's fat, he's lazy, which is common among male cats. And so, and because he's a fluff ball, then he needs extra special care because you just don't want to clean yourself, do you? No, you don't, my good boy. Oh, he's just the sweetest kitty ever. Anyway, and now Sam and Sara, ask the expert. Here you go.
All right, we have a few questions for you.
Great.
So, our first list, we want to know if you think these are good reasons to get married. So, starting with the first reason, do you think it's a good reason to get married when one of them commits a crime so the other one doesn't have to testify?
Yeah.
You approve. Okay.
To keep you out of jail. Definitely.
Wait, hold on. Does it matter if you weren't married at the time of the crime?
I think so, because if you can't have them testify if they're married, right? I don't know.
You can't, you cannot compel a spouse to testify against their spouse in a criminal
what about past acts prior to me? Yeah.
But that's the part that I'm like, when are they married?
Well, because at some point they had to tell you about that. So talking about it's still part of like marital
What if they told you before you're married and then they get like, I don't, we'd have to go back to the bar exam. But I think
the crime together.
Oh.
If you commit the crime together, well, hold on. But were you married at the time of the act?
No, you did it, and then you were like, "Crap, let's get married."
So you don't. I think maybe the more important question is they can't be compelled to testify.
Yeah,
but what if they want to?
Ooh. Yeah, because you cannot be compelled, but you can waive that in a criminal court.
That'd be
okay, great question. What's next?
I know.
Okay. Is this a good reason to get married? Medical benefits.
Yes. Do you have any idea how much medical things cost, especially if one person has really access to a really good like health insurance policy? Yes. But I mean, all of these things you should have a prenup ahead of time so you don't have some kind of bad financial benefit. But yeah, for real.
All right, next.
Okay. What about FAFSA, student aid?
That often can be a bad reason to get married.
Oh, really?
Because then you make too much.
Right, because if you've got, let's say you've got the legal parent who doesn't make very much, but then they get married to someone who does, I think FAFSA looks at household income, not just the income. So it can actually be a reason not to get married, among many others.
Among many others, yeah.
Just want to be clear.
And then,
all right, what's next?
Good reasons to get married. One gets pregnant and they're Catholic. You don't want to be born out of wedlock.
You don't want to be born out of wedlock? Because
I mean, I was born out of wedlock.
Well, that's you.
Oh.
My parents were married.
You know what, Sam? So was I.
Until I was like 7.
What?
Yeah.
Born or conceived?
Both. They didn't marry until I was like 7.
So that's right. That's why your name changed.
Yeah, so her name changed from Walsh to Anderson.
Really I am. Add that to Jamie part 2. We need to talk about name changes.
My parents got married like 6 weeks after I was born. And they got a babysitter. I didn't even get to go.
It's like, oh, come on. No, that's not nice.
All right. Okay. All right. No. We got to go. What's next?
Okay. So now we're on to if these are good reasons to get divorced. So number 1, the other one ate your leftovers and you were really excited for them at the end of the day. You had a really bad day and this was your one shining light and they ate them.
Yeah. Divorce. I can definitely get divorced over that.
Okay.
That's
Especially
really
if it's a sandwich with the moist maker.
The moist maker sandwich.
Who's the moist maker?
Friends?
It's
Then
Jamie.
there's
All right. Tia knows apparently. I knew
sorry.
Jamie would know, but
Yeah.
poor Sam doesn't know. We'll have to find a clip for you.
Yes, please. I haven't seen Friends in a hot minute.
Shame
Good
on you.
reasons to get
That's
divorced.
a reason to get divorced.
Yeah.
Good reasons to get divorced. So in a past life, one of them killed the other in cold blood as they were cowboys dueling at dawn, with the sheriff watching, of course, to ensure that it was a fair fight. And it's in like a small, dusty town, and the one who wins feels no remorse for killing the other.
Where do you come up with this shit?
And they only found this out after they got married?
Yeah, like they go to like one of those people that can help unlock your past lives or whatever it is.
No, I think that's not a good reason, because obviously there's something that's drawing you together in every life, so you got to stick with it.
So
You just got to wait and find out.
Yeah.
That's great, Sarah.
Okay, what about if a palm reader says no?
No to
Wait,
what?
Are they with
being
California
married?
psychics?
They say no, you shouldn't.
Apparently, those are some
like
quality psychics.
They say you shouldn't be married anymore.
Oh, well,
Should you get a divorce?
I mean, if you're going to the palm reader in the first place, then I imagine that their opinion might be fairly important. So I don't know if it's a good reason, but you probably should do what they say.
All right.
They cheated on the other in a dream.
It's definitely a reason for a fight, because that's not cool. But divorce, nah.
What if they joined or became president of the PTSA without consulting you?
Oh my gosh.
Oh,
Ooh.
Purely hypothetical question.
I think that, I mean, yeah, you just say you have to end this obligation.
Okay. Also hypothetical. Sarah, what you got?
So this is completely hypothetical, but what if you want to get divorced because you've never known what true love looks like, and now you're in it and it feels too good to be true, and statistically nobody gets this lucky. Like, she's got to be hiding something, a secret double life, a secret family in Idaho. I don't know, maybe she's a con artist. Why else would she laugh at my jokes? Some of them are really bad. Why would she remember things?
Do I need to have a conversation with Emily?
Some dark secret that she doesn't really know.
Sarah.
So what if I just like end it right now before things get too serious, even though we're already married, and that's pretty serious? That doesn't really stop me from convincing myself that it's a ticking time bomb. So should I get divorced?
Well, first you should consult your palm reader, and then you should hire a private investigator to see if any of your fears are validated. And
okay,
if they're not, then your spouse should divorce you.
Okay, yeah, therapy, and they should divorce me.
Yeah. And someone needs a therapist.
They should divorce you.
Oh my God.
Good God.
Yes.
I suddenly feel very sorry for any therapist Sarah has ever seen. What was that just now?
That was completely, I just kind of spitballed. Like, I just started, I wrote it before the podcast. I was like, let me just
Sarah,
write out anything crazy.
You need to journal about this later.
Break semester too if they say no.
That's why we only put self-sabotage in the title, because we wanted your genuine reactions.
All right. So we're running short on time. This is the last one. This is the coup d'etat.
Yes, and this is in the other category. Okay, so say that I'm in a relationship, right? And when it started, I had a pet. I've had this pet, say, for like, I don't know, like their whole life. And when I got into this relationship, my ex and my pet really bonded. But now we've broken up, and because I've had the pet since before we met, it's like mine, right? They can't claim like community property, and I can just, tear the two of them apart forever.
Yeah, we should have clarified that when we were talking about community property. Anything you have had that was yours before you got married, that's yours. And your spouse can't have it. So they don't get the pet, they don't get visitation rights. It's yours.
Man.
No matter how close they are.
Ripping bonds.
So if you got it together before, then it's joint separate property, and you'll have to cut it in half.
But which
way? Okay. Oh no,
Which
no, 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 no,
day?
no.
I hate this one.
We talk far too much about how to cut living beings in half. So on that, we're gonna end. Jamie, thank you. We're gonna have to have you back on very soon, Sarah. That's your
Yeah.
job.
Mhm.
But until then, Jamie Duggan, Duggan Family Law, Duggan and Associates, whatever she wants to call herself, we'll make sure that you have any contact. And thank you, Jamie, for joining us. Thanks for listening. And just to cover all our bases about what you just heard, I'm sorry and you're welcome. Make sure you subscribe so you never miss an episode. And tell your friends about us. We do webinars and live events. The best way to stay up to date is to follow us on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, and YouTube. Links are in the show notes. If there's a topic you'd like us to cover, maybe you have a question you'd like us to answer, or maybe you just want to say hi, hit the link in the show notes or go to burch-law.com/podcast and fill out the contact form.
Much better.
Yeah, I thought that had a lot of energy.